But we just want to thank you for joining us today on 𝗏𝗏𝗃 Talk. We're just going to watch and follow along like little children.
Very much appreciate the opportunity. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. You're fairly new in this stuff. You're learning all the time. I think you're coming in an ideal time. I think you'll look like geniuses in a few years, right? And even people don't buy our stock, they'll look back and go, "Whoa, we should have listened to them," and that kind of stuff. And that's as good as anything. A lot of times people tell me about something, and later on I phone them back. Wow, I respect your opinion, right? Yeah, get people educated, talk to people. And I'm happy to talk anytime if you want to have a Q&A and introduction to mining and how to get people started and where the resources are, and also good channels to follow. But you guys are doing a great job, and I'm honored to be recognized by you and be working with you.
All right, Dave, it's so great to have you here with us today on 𝗏𝗏𝗃 Talk. We would love it if you just give us a brief overview of the Stuhini explorations, their current project portfolio, with specifically a focus on the Ruby Creek molybdenum project, because that's so different in the area of the things that we talk about when we talk about investing in mining and resources. So it'd be really great if you could share with us and what makes it green.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the interest. It's really nice to get to know you guys. It's great. Yeah, our flagship project is the Ruby Creek molybdenum deposit. It's quite an advanced asset, previously financed into actual construction in 2008 from the previous operator. So it's more or less shovel ready. It's been through feasibility. We recently updated the resource. We used a fairly conservative firm. Even though the last resource update done by the previous operator was 43-101. Change views after 10 years, do your own. And we hired an independent firm out of Nevada, and they came up. So we have a pit constrained resource of measured and indicated of 433 million pounds of molybdenum, and there's another 43 million inferred as well. The deposit is open in a few directions. It's open at depth as well, so there's a potential for more, but it was big enough to fund construction previously. It's also road accessible. It used to be a Forest Service road. They upgraded the road to a haul road with lead core. It's ready to go. It still has a BC Mines Act permit intact. And, it's molybdenum is not very, we have obviously a portfolio of other projects as well, but they're much earlier stage. They don't compare to a very advanced sort of shovel-ready project like this. The other projects are exciting, but they're more greenfields. And we've been looking for projects, while the market's extremely depressed and we have some cash on hand. We've also been looking because when things are cheap and out of favor, that's opportunity, and we're value investors. We're kind of agnostic. We try and pick up quality assets when they're cheap and out of favor and make sense. And we're trying we really like the Southwest U.S. As well, because it's a year-round exploration. So we're trying to get a bit of a precious metals flavor because we seem to be going into a bull market and pressure. You wouldn't know by the junior mining stocks, but certainly the seniors are starting to do well. And again, we're looking for some assets that make sense. So.
Back on moly, that's what I'll call it, because I do have a problem pronouncing it. How do you see the market for the metal itself? And I know you were just recently in Japan, so I imagine that you've got some information and view of the market at this point.
I'll be honest with you. When we acquired this asset and we had an option on it in 2019, I was intrigued by molybdenum, but I wasn't enamored by it. And the more I've gotten to know about it and understand it and get to know it better, the more interesting I find it. It's certainly a metal whose demand is growing. Everybody, whether you're bullish or bearish, everybody agreed the future for molybdenum is good in Tokyo. And these are the biggest players in the world. That it's not just the steel industry. There's potentially some new segments, and it's also quite a green energy metal. I think the future right now. Lightning. We all know electric cars are very, very heavy, and the number one use for molybdenum is strengthening and lightening steel. So when you add molybdenum, the steel's stronger. Therefore, you can go to thinner wall, which means lightning, bridges and trusses, but that's a good future. And geothermal is a big one as well. Geothermal, you're dealing with corrosive, bubbly, hot material. That's the type of steel. You need quite high quantities of molybdenum for the corrosion and what have you. And even, the reason molybdenum, it's sort of an up and down, had its spikes, but in the early 2000s, it really went, the price went quite crazy. And it was due to the Western Sedimentary Basin, the buildup of the pipelines. And natural gas, for example, is quite corrosive, and gas pipelines require quite a bit of molybdenum as well. It's an interesting metal, and our deposit's also a bit unusual because it's a very clean type deposit. It's not full of nasty sulfides, so tailings will be clean, and hopefully we won't have to dry stack, which is getting very expensive nowadays. You can still build a tailings dam. It's a green energy metal, environmentally friendly, and as far as open pit mining goes, it's probably the cleanest type you'll ever see is some of these Climax style high fluorine based deposits, so they're quite unusual.
How would this resource how would it impact your daily mining activities as an exploration company in a sustainable, positive way?
Right now, we've decided that we're going to try and find a partner, and we're pursuing that. Like we're open to three different possibilities. One is a strategic investment within our company. We're not worried about giving somebody, up to 19.9% of our company, considering we're already at 39.5% insider holdings. Our co-founder and 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 and myself are large shareholders. I've also a lot of my fly fishing associates are. So we're probably more like 60 or we're quite tightly held. So we don't mind giving someone strategic investment. Number two is a possible joint venture. Our preference would be a joint venture where someone would write us a check and buy up to 50% of the project, and we can use those funds to further explore, because one of the holes bottomed out in very high grade moly. It'd be underground, not open pit, but it's very noteworthy. It's world class. Like hole 80-417 bottomed out in 46 meters of 0.23% MO, and the biggest, North America, the biggest underground operations, Henderson runs 0.2. That's run by Freeport's subsidiary Climax. And then lastly, we might even consider an outright sale of the project if it makes sense. It's a big win for the company, because it is frustrating. Right now, base metals are just, there's no interest in them, yet there's tremendous underinvestment in the sector, and there's tremendous shortages coming for copper and nickel and moly, because no one's even drilling right now. And, they see on average nowadays, and this could be a little exaggerative, but I recently read that if we're walking through the woods and we find a mineralized outcrop that eventually becomes a mine, on average is 23 years before we're pouring metal. And people have no idea. They think you just snap your fingers and get the stuff. And, when copper was 40 cents a pound or 45 cents a pound in the late 90s, it had to go to $4 to bring on the next cycle. And even all those discoveries aren't economic right now. And right now with inflation, the capex of building these projects is, it's staggering. I was talking to some very senior people in Tokyo last week, and they said, if someone tells us $1 billion to build a project, we assume $2 billion. We just double it. And that's just because you have to be careful. It's getting crazy.
So would you say that with the deficit, and it's very becoming evident to most of us that are becoming more knowledgeable in this space particularly, does that worry you?
It doesn't. I mean, the bad times always lead to good times, right? And the best solution to low resource prices is low resource prices. But when everything's stalled right now, it's going to cause tremendous shortages. And I think with the big, people are going to want, it's very inflationary, right? Because, how are we going to, to me, nothing makes sense with copper until copper moves to double or triple these levels. We need at least $10 a pound copper to start making some projects to make sense and make some big players willing to make that investment, right? So it'll be a future without metals, or metals will be very, very valuable and expensive. And people wonder what happened. Why are they expensive? And well, no one would fund anybody and allow them to even look for the stuff or advance projects forward. So they're all chasing these ridiculously priced stocks that make no sense at all, and not understanding that everything you look at is either grown or it's produced out of the ground, right? So whether you like it or not, all these people that are anti-mining, but they've got cell phones and electric cars, and they're actually pro-mining. Again, there's just a lot of, there's a generation that doesn't understand how important it is. And it frustrates me, because I look at, Vancouver 130 years ago was an old growth forest, and that's been wiped right out and built a big city. And, it's okay to build dams and flood land forever. But my goodness, don't try and build a mine, right? Even if it's very friendly and a small footprint. And I know a gentleman and got some projects in Montana that were former mines. He's turned them into beautiful trout fishing ponds, and people hunt on his land. They don't even know there was a mine there from back in the day. And it's just it's a lot of misinformation and a lot of idealism that people don't look at data.
And I guess that goes with the fact that government policy is not really shaped that well. But when in the jurisdiction of Ruby, what is it like dealing with government there, do you think?
Well, British Columbia is a pretty good jurisdiction, and we're quite blessed. We're on the sacred land of the Taku River Tlingit First Nation, and they're very progressive, and they approved the project previously. And we're very fortunate, because many projects, for example, our Revelstoke project, our zinc project, there's several bands to deal with. We only deal with one, and they're quite progressive. They're a smaller band. Anything we need to do, we need drill permits. We want to work. You work with the government and the First Nation band and together, and to get your permitting. And they're quite progressive. But I'll be honest with you, it does scare us. A lot of the governments are becoming very sort of left and almost a bit anti-mining, and also putting a lot of unrealistic. They're the ones, all around the world, they're slowing project process down. They're telling everybody we need green energy, and we're going to fund this and fund that. But try getting a permit, right? I mean, and actually the permits are fine. The environmental stuff has gone through the roof. I mean, this pipeline to the West Coast was supposed to be $4 billion, and then it was $8 billion. Now it's 40 and counting. And I'd say over half of that is just environmental stuff that doesn't make I mean, why would you remediate all the soil? If you're going to scoop up a cubic meter of soil, you put it aside and put it back down, but no, it's trucked 100 kilometers away to get remediated and sent back. It makes no sense. Years ago, we progressed, and nowadays nothing can happen without this massive environmental type stuff. So it's gone a little extreme. Again, the awakening is not far away.
So when you're looking for new projects, you mentioned the Southwest United States. I'm guessing that's Nevada, Arizona. How do you think it'll be dealing there? And what does it look like? Like what kind of projects? Are they hard to find, or what's the market look like?
Well, it's interesting. Again, right now, it's a tale of two worlds, because there are vendors out there that are very unreasonable, that want ridiculous amounts of money and shares in our company, and it's not going to happen. But there are vendors out there that are reasonable and also understand the tough times. So that's what we're looking for, is reasonable vendors and quality projects where they, a lot of these projects are neat and there might be 1 million ounces, but we want something that, has the potential that would, one day attract at least a mid-tier, right? Where it's road accessible and a sizable project, where it's got a footprint that shows. It's always risky. Any exploration project you have is risky. Again, we're a very unusual junior conducting risky exploration, but backtrack with the project like Ruby Creek. Very, very rarely will you find a junior in that position. But we liked it down there. I was just driving around, Nevada in June, and there's heap leach projects all over the place, almost every town, in the backyards. They're very accepting of mining. They get it. It's safe, made a lot of money for them. And those are the two states, I would say, Arizona and Nevada, where it's quite accepted. There's pockets of California, and I'm hearing things about Idaho, and New Mexico is not bad. But I hate to say it, I'm in the fly fishing business. Someone once said to me, never invest in a mining company, a state where fly fishing is popular. Look at Alaska and Pebble and some of the stuff in Montana that's just not going forward, right?
So what about the other projects the company has at present? Do you have plans for them, or are they?
We just did a little bit of work in Revelstoke at our zinc project, and we've done a little bit of work at the Q. Our teams were just up there doing some sampling, and again, we could put the news out, but there's no follow-up, and we want to make sure we put news out. It's very significant. There's follow-up, but we are working these projects and mulling as we weigh different things. We're actually, I won't mention which project, where we're considering selling one of our projects as well right now. So again, we're always evaluating opportunities as they exist, and we have to, when we have, scarce resources, and funding is very difficult. So you have to make sure that funding goes towards something that's going to be accretive and, the shareholders, it makes sense. And what might have made sense was, say, 2 years ago, might not make sense today. So you got to be careful that way. And money's very scarce, not really readily available these days. And we don't want to dilute our stock. We certainly don't want to be anything dilutive down here at these levels. So we got to be very careful and watch our dollars carefully. And for example, if the precious metals market seems to be waking up, that might be a good area now to have some good projects where you're going to attract funding and the big investors. And we've mulled over spinning off Ruby Creek and creating two companies, a pure play moly company and an exploration company, because I got to be careful. I don't want to be chasing high risk exploration, diluting my stock substantially, given that we have this molybdenum asset, and given that molybdenum has done so well, the prices have held up so well, and the future looks so good. And again, it's a big project. There's only, from what I gather, half a dozen or less of these projects available in the Western world, and ours was the only one that actually funded mine construction during the last cycle. I can be happy to compare the other projects, but ours speaks for itself.
One of the things I find very attractive for us as retail investors is your share structure is very, I would say, brilliant. And so I'd love it if you could just break down what that looks like for anybody who would be watching, so they understand how the ownership and the leadership of the company is beneficial to the everyday retail investor.
Yeah, we went public in 2019. We did something unusual. We didn't take over a shell like a lot of people do a reverse takeover. We went public, did our own IPO from scratch. Haywood was the underwriter, and when we went public, we had about 10 million shares outstanding. To this day, we have 39.6 in the last 5 years, and in doing that, we've done a fair amount of work at Ruby Creek. We've now completed the option at Ruby Creek too, which is very important. We no longer have an option on the project. We own it 100%, subject to a 1% royalty. So right now we have 39.5% insider holdings, and the insiders are either people who work for the company, like myself, co-founder, or people holding 10% or higher, like Eric Sprott, and then the co-founder of the company are insiders. So that's quite unusual. A lot of people brag about their tight share structure. They tell you have 90 million with 12% insider. We have less than 50 million with 39.6. And what people don't realize as well is I've been an investor all my life, and that's sort of my forte, specializing in mineral exploration. And I run a fly fishing business. And a lot of my fly fishing associates have been there since day one. They bought seed stock, and they participated in a lot of financings and BC flow through, and they all have their holdings. And that's probably up to another 20% as well. So it's a good structure. We're all patient, right? We realize extremely difficult market times, and no one's hard up. And I tell people, hey, give me a call if you got any questions or concerns. I'll provide you a bit of an update. I got to be careful. I can only provide information that's publicly available, but it's exciting. Like I say, we've been approached on multiple fronts about our molybdenum deposit from some unusual sources lately. So there seems to be some long-term smart money realizing that resources are very scarce. And not like so many investors nowadays want like instant gratification. They want to buy a stock and have it double tomorrow. But people realize these projects, these base metal projects are attractive and very, very undervalued. And now's the time for smart money to take advantage. Right?
I just want to touch on what you're just talking about is like the sort of instant gratification thing. And I think that probably lends to, like, I have a 17-year-old son. He very much lives in that world. They just think things pop out of thin air. You know what I mean? So I think like the goal here, especially for us and me as a mother, like get that message out there for younger generations that are starting to come into the market, is teaching them that patience and going through the ups and downs and the flows of what a market looks like. What would you say to a younger investor, say my son, if he's entering this market at his age right now?
I'd say, do your homework and learn about mining. I think that there's a generational opportunity here, whether you're in precious metals or base metals. I've never seen anything quite like it. I mean, late 15 was similar, but this is amazing that, I was recently on a panel in New York and we talked about gold and silver stocks. And I just said, it's a lot cheaper to buy an existing, like if it cost me $300 million to drill out a resource, another $100 million to do all my feasibility work and environmental permitting, and then $600 million to build a project. I got $1 billion in there. And generally, you can buy those companies for 10 cents on the dollar. So buy, like for example, Steve, we have the goods. Buy companies that have the goods where you're getting an asset. Like how expensive would it be right now to drill, 339 holes and build a road and do all the feasibility work that's already been done, right? We're trying to get them just a small fraction of that. So forget about the arm waving. You do your homework. Buy companies with advanced resources that are cheap, but do your homework. And learn about mining and again, there's great opportunity, but be patient because 10, 20, 30 baggers, you can have huge money and sound money, not hoping and praying for something to happen. As long as you do your homework, you'll do well. I think it's very exciting. And every time I've seen these devastated markets, these points, I salivate as an investor because that's the best opportunity. And, it's just so funny that, there's an old saying when they're crying, you want to be buying. And, a year and a half ago, I was in Toronto. Everyone was buzzing about lithium, and I looked at some very unscrupulous promoters and moose pasture projects that had ridiculous valuation. I said, "Lighten up on the lithium. There's too much hype, and it's gone too far." Well, all those deals are now trading at 20% of where they were. So when everyone's talking about how bad it is, you want to be getting in. And when talking about how good it is, you want to, lighten up. And I look at these technology stocks, these Magnificent Seven, and a couple of them are kind of medium, but most of the valuations are obscure. Reminds me an awful lot of the 1999 to 2000 bubble, and it's never different. It's never different this time. I got out of tech stocks a year early, and people thought I was a fool. And I know people that lost their marriages, they lost their houses, and they're buying Nortel at $110 a share and mortgaging their house, and it's just foolish. I've been in the business all my life, and I'm most fascinated with investing, and I'm a simple person. I don't need to have a fancy watch and a fancy car and all those things. But I got a kick out of watching investing and how people react, and how when there's great opportunity, they're not interested and they're chasing stuff that doesn't make sense. But it's a crowd mentality, and you want to be one step ahead of the crowd and understand how important resources are. And I don't want to change the subject here, but precious metals, we've got the Western governments, that the U.S. and Canada and Europe, they're broke. And here's the U.S. taking $4.5 trillion a year in taxes and spending $8. And how much more? So that's why I like gold, for example. I mean, the U.S. became the greatest country in the world under a gold system where it just doesn't let governments run deficits. And ever since they left gold, look what's happened in the Western world, right?
Incredible. And then consider that Canada's government sold all its gold a long time ago. It's
At the bottom of the market too. That tells you at the very bottom of the market when gold was $350 an ounce, we sold our gold, and we were supposed to trust all these bankers, right? These central bankers are all wrong, and it's I just look at it as a Ponzi scheme almost. It's just I became more of a gold bug and almost a resource bug in 2008 when the U.S. started printing money. I'm going, wait a minute, you're the United States. I mean, this isn't some third world country. This is supposed to be the safest thing in the world is own dollars, and they're printing money, and their policies have been just to not address their what they've been doing for years and years, even when their budget deficit for less than $1 trillion to running $700 and $800 billion trade imbalances, insisting that the people on the other side just buy their bonds. Well, that's backfired. I mean, China's greatly reduced their holding of U.S. treasuries, and who's going to buy this $39 trillion in debt, right? And it'll be interesting. That's why I don't see rates coming down much, because if you told me, Dave, you have to buy a U.S. bond, I'd want at least a 15% return. I view it as high risk, and there's a very strong chance of default. It's going to default. And yet this is supposed to be the safest thing in the world, and don't even question it, and don't ask any questions, and not in my lifetime. That's foolhardy. We're seeing it happen right now.
So speaking of financing and that, so how is Stuhini set financially, and would you raise money at any time in the future, or how do you see that?
Well, we have about $1.1 million in the treasury, and we can run a pretty low burn rate. I could survive a couple of years on that. I've got about just under a $500,000 annual G&A, and that includes paying my VPX, who deserves to be adequately paid. Myself and Charles and Yana draw, very low salaries. My annual salary is $24,000 a year. But that all budget also includes our maintaining our Ruby Creek tenures. We have to pay $49,000 a year to the BC government. It also includes storing our drill core, because we have a good portion of the core in storage as well. It's expensive to run a pubco. Your legal costs. We have very good counsel. You're also when our first audit was $10,000, and now they're over 30. Change the transfer agents, and everyone's got their hand out for money. But we're learning and try to do as much as we can ourselves. And we have a very low burn rate, and we can survive a while. So it doesn't make sense for us to do financing now at the bottom. We also want to do a lot more marketing soon. We haven't done a lot of marketing, but we believe we'll have news soon. It'll be substantial news. We want to follow up on that, and then I'll start traveling a little more, and also picking up the phone and talking to a lot more people and being more aggressive on that front as well. And again, you have to have news to follow up on, not just to put out a one-off news release. And we also like to be low key intentionally. We don't want to beat our chest all the time and exaggerate and pump and things like that.
Go ahead.
Oh,
no,
thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I appreciate that you sharing that. From an investor's perspective, transparency, I think, is quite critical. You have dual listings on two different stock exchanges. What does that mean for the investor that's just kind of understanding what Stuhini is about, and what would you say the benefits and possibly a detriment to an investor that's looking at Stuhini on these stock exchanges?
Yeah, we chose to, we IPO'd on the TSX Venture, and I'll be honest with you, TSX Venture is much more credible in my opinion than other exchanges. They have very high standards, and they're very protective of shareholders, and that's why I really respect them. And sometimes I don't want to get into it, but sometimes it worries me, because you can do certain things when you're not in the venture that can be unscrupulous. And we decided to pursue a U.S. listing because, I'll be honest with you, when we did our last financing was about a year and a half ago, we had many U.S. investors coming in. Quite a lot of the interest. Now, I do plan on, when I focus marketing coming forward, it will be mostly U.S. based, because I'll be honest with you, the Canadian investors are pretty blown up. People that have bought resources, they haven't done well. But it also starts a chain reaction. Once the stocks do well, people have more money, they buy more deals, and they do well, and they just start and that reaction hasn't happened yet. But the U.S. investors are, a lot of them are now more curious. I was in the Orleans Gold Conference last year, and I was quite startled and a lot of the guys, they actually weren't buying gold stocks per se, they were buying physical gold. But they're worried about the dad, but they also realize that the people that made a lot of money in technology, they realize that we're very smart people, realize this is very bubbly, and I want to take some money off the table, and they're starting to realize how important resources are and how cheap they are. So that to me is a market that's ripe, and it's not completely blown up. And the Canadian market, people phone me all the time. I have always high net worth investors that want to buy your stock. And I've been to Toronto how many times? I know all the brokers and all the players, and right now. And I have a syndicate as well, and we invest, and we're pretty fussy, and we're just extremely fussy right now. We'll write checks, but it's just for the right deals and the right projects. It's always about management, right? And number one, the most important, I tell people the three most important things are management, management, and management. And once I've been burnt by a group, I'll never give them a nickel again. And it's just sort of a rule I have to stick by, because once a thief, always a thief is something I've found out. There's a lot of people that are involved in this business all their life. They've never created any value. And the people that create value seem to do it again and again and again. And again, a lot of these people that create values or projects are quite inexpensive now, right? So those are the ones you want to write checks to, right?
Well, that's one thing that we try to look at is who's managing it. And as I asked the question, do we have enough money to go forward for a while? The market, as you describe it, is incredible. The years I've spent, I've never seen a disconnect like this. I'd have to agree that that's probably one of the best opportunities I've ever seen. So if I was 20 again or so, I'd be in with both hands. After doing, as you say, homework. YouTube has helped. Interviews like this that you're doing with us will help them understand who is management and why does it matter.
Yeah, it is so important because, in 2020, we had a really good pop in the precious metal stocks, for example. And I noticed that the market was when I had a couple 10 baggers, it was very successful. But I noticed that the companies that did the best were run by unscrupulous people who embrace social media. And they literally take every nickel they had and throw into social media because gold was hot, for example. And their stocks all soared and all came back down, and people got burnt. They got fleeced. And it was the unscrupulous people that recognized that, hey, I can put some tweets out there and again, they were uneducated investors chasing the wrong stocks. And that's why it's very important. And those people are all turned off now. Oh, I don't want to buy mining stocks. They got burnt. Well, they were, reading the Twitter and the Instagram feeds and buying the wrong companies, right? That, and good companies don't spend all their money on marketing. They don't. We have to be very disciplined. Like when I give you my budget and say that's $100,000 in marketing as well. That means going to Toronto every year and go to Vancouver, go to PDAC, and then some buffers to travel and do some other things that we're looking at too. So we do have we have to have a marketing budget. But again, be careful and make sure they own resources in the ground and don't get caught up on one drill hole. Like I'd rather buy companies where they already know if I can buy gold at less than $10 an ounce in the ground, I salivate. And the second thing is to learn about the different types. It takes a while, but to learn about the different types of deposits, like our Ruby Creek deposit, porphyry deposit. Those are big bulk tonnage. That's what the big boys want. They want these porphyry, these intrusion-related deposits, not chasing narrow veins like they used to do and things like that. There are some exceptions in Mexico. They do a lot of that, but it's learning about that. But you always want porphyry systems, or nowadays even CRD, these skarn type systems, and Coeur mining and the Silvertip project in BC and Bingham Canyon, some of these things that CRDs were once kind of frowned upon, but it's a small little manifestation of something that might be much, much larger. It's almost like an octopus where you're looking at one of the outside tentacles, and don't always be myopic. You want to look at the big picture, and all deposits are driven by big molten rocks that came in called intrusions. And those are the big porphyries, and often above porphyries, you get a lot of hot springs and epithermal gold vein systems. And if it's the limestone or carbonate hosted, you get all your CRD and your skarns. But learn about those things. They're all generated by porphyries. And learn these things are, and that's what the big boys, the Newmonts and the Rio Tintos, they're looking for porphyry systems because they're large bulk tonnage, 30-year mine life, and bulk tonnage, low grade tends to win every time. It's just the bulk tonnage. Once that mine's built, they just become printing presses.
Well, that'll be an interesting topic to touch upon a little bit later time. The big boys, I love that you talked about that. We obviously are going to be paying attention and watching what you guys are going to be doing over the next year or so, and obviously would love to be able to keep sharing and helping get your story and the message of Stuhini across to what we would say is, the younger retail investor, which I think is a huge pain point, I think, in the precious metals market. But we just want to thank you for joining us today on Mindstock Talk, and we're just gonna watch and follow along like little children.
Very much appreciate the opportunity. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job you're fairly new in this stuff. You're learning all the time. I think you're coming in an ideal time. I think you'll look like geniuses in a few years, right? And even people don't buy our stock, they'll look back and go, wow, we should have listened to them, and that kind of stuff. And that's as good as anything. A lot of times people tell me about something and later on I phone them back, wow, respect your opinion, right? Get people educated, talk to people. And I'm happy to talk anytime if you want to have a Q&A, an introduction to mining and how to get people started and where the resources are, and also good channels to follow. But you guys are doing a great job, and I'm honored to be recognized by you and be working with you.
Calling all savvy investors in mining and resources. Seeking the inside track on Stuhini exploration? Look no further than 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Our cutting-edge search tool is designed to reveal hidden gems and provides real-time stock updates. Visit for the insights and stay for the gains. Seize the opportunity and explore the magic at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Uncover new investment possibilities today. Don't forget to hit the bell below to subscribe and then like and share this video. Let's get the word out there.